All right. So I'm. I was hoping Joe would join me because he's someone I think that has observed more change than I have. I'm someone who has changed, and I'm often able to get people to comply now that I'm less angry and have less of a chip on my shoulder than I used to. It's still there, but I know that it's primarily ineffective. There are times when one has to do that and one has to go perhaps to a more primal nature. But I've heard that things like reverse psychology are rather effective, and kindness can be effective. People can take advantage of kindness, but I have found that if I don't take things personally and I give basically unthreatening vibes, I do get more accomplished. I also realize, you know what, life is unfair. Human beings are unfair, and they will put you down. They will say things to you that that you'd never want to heard, to be said to you. But again, as I've grown older, it affects me less, um, although I'm not perfect at it. It's something that I strive to uh, be better at and be more humble as a human being. One of the things that I truly believe that human beings are deserving to be heard and oftentimes innocent until proven guilty. There are exceptions to those rules, and contrition and forgiveness are also something that human beings should also have for one another, for people, for humans. We all do things, or many of us, maybe not all of us, but many of us have done things out of arrogance, out of ego, that have hurt us, and that if we look back on, it's something that we would never do again. And I could only speak for myself. Many of the times that I have acted in an angry fashion, I have regretted those times. And there are times where I could have avoided it. There are some times where I couldn't avoid it, where the person was completely unhinged. But there are times when I could have handled things in a more reasonable manner with an unreasonable person. And if I had it to do over again, I'd like to think that I would do so differently. And I do spend a lot of time online, and that's where my struggle is right now. I argue with people about certain thoughts and ideologies, and when people don't agree with me, it's rather difficult. And the things you see online, particularly when you argue within the political realm, what you're going to see is a lot of insults and a lot of people just putting each other down. Now, that's not there to change really anybody, but I guess to a degree, I've done things like that before, and that made me feel good. Brian Stelter I guess he's no longer working. And there are a lot of conservatives that are rejoicing. And there would be a lot of conservatives that would be rejoicing if Don Lemon lost his job, because his views are different, and also his demeanor and his behavior. But I don't know if conservatives necessarily also bring to the table good things, or if they're diplomatic. I do believe perhaps today they're more diplomatic than they used to be. And liberals and leftists are the ones that aren't, but maybe I'm biased. But I've seen on both ends where both can be not listening to each other, not hearing one another. And one of the things that I want to do is be able to hear someone, be able to listen to somebody, even if I don't agree with them. And, I want the same in return. As a human being, I want the same in return. And there are issues that I thought weren't getting talked out that, had I had it to do over again, I would have done so in a different manner. And 2020 has been a rather difficult time for, I believe, people who think freely and perhaps even think outside the box in this world. And I kind of want to, I would like, if I could, because it's just interesting to me, to bring people of different, perhaps even different backgrounds together, who agree on some essentials, at least hearing people out. Now, there are times when people are just filled with ego and they're just there to be cruel. And then there are times when people have legitimate concerns and they want legitimate answers as human beings. And, I want to be able to strive to decipher, or even if someone else can decipher these concerns to the best of my ability. And if there's anyone out there that can do it better than me, that can, basically talk to people and at least get them to hear the other side and be able to understand the other side as a human being. And what rights do other human beings have? What rights do their ideas have? I guess we could say, in the battle of ideas, what rights do they have? And what rights do people with different opinions have to talk to one another, speak to one another, and try to, I guess, work their differences out? How much of that is possible with regards to the human condition and the condition that we are living in today? It's something that I think of. I do have a background. I guess being a film fan and a bit of a news junkie, and I used to watch talk shows all the time as well. And I've also been an internet and YouTube junkie, and I've heard different people's perspective on things. And one of the things I want to do is just bring out culture and how that has changed and how that shapes society, how popular culture shapes society, and how popular culture, like the people that are pushing back on popular culture and the people that are pushing certain things the way they want things to be with regards to popular culture. I wonder if there can be even a meeting of the minds between two groups, or even two moderate. Are there any moderate groups left in this country? And I don't know if in this world, if there are moderate groups that can meet together to bring kind of a peace together where at least human beings can be told and said things, like explained to things in a non-condescending manner. Because that's my belief right now with a lot of conservatives, particularly with a lot of Trump supporters. I was not necessarily a hardcore Trump supporter. I was anti-woke, very much so. And I've said bad things about them. They sounded like a cult. And what I observed was the form of vindictiveness with regards to their behavior. It did anger me. And the things that I liked as a child and as an adult, and the things that my parents liked and valued as an adult, and my family heritage, I felt to a degree was just being burned at the stake without discussion, without any meaningful talk. And that was very hard for me. And I was extremely angry about that. Because, I value the movies and the cinema of the past. I understand that there were things that were insulting there. But there were also things that were good and noble. And I think many of the things that were insulting and not good were not done with any kind of secret way to put people in their place. It was done in a in my opinion, in a very thoughtless manner. I don't think there was any kind of thought behind the modern, much of the cinema in the, particularly in the, the 30s, 40s, 50s. I don't think there was any thought behind that. I just think that it was very thoughtless, and it wasn't thinking many times of people of different heritages and different racial groups, and it was rather insensitive. And it depicted certain things that were not historically accurate. I think today we also depict things that are not historically accurate. And we tend to go the other way with regards to historical accuracy in films and in cinema. And we tend to over-dramatize things, and we tend to make things less than what they are. And we tend to make drama when there isn't any in some of these historical dramas and films. That's what I've observed. Could be wrong on that, though. But I think again, it's rather important to discuss as many issues as we can, and discuss where certain things come from. And again, some of these ideologies were set out there, they cultivated, and now people believe them to be right, and they believe them to be right without question, without debate. And it feels like that we just have to obey certain cultural norms within the establishment. And I certainly disagree with that. I certainly don't feel that it makes me feel like a human being. And to me, I believe that all human beings are worthy to be heard. If they're going to be punished, they're worthy to be heard as human beings. If they're going to be financially hurt, they're worthy to be heard as human beings. And if they are destroyed through the internet, they're worthy to be heard as human beings. If they are destroyed by the court of public opinion, then they are worthy to be heard in the court of public opinion. If a Twitter mob goes after somebody, I want that person to be able at least to defend themselves. I would like that. And I think that makes for a moral society. If you punish somebody for doing something that you believe is wrong, I don't believe that the mob has the right to come after someone without some kind of due process. A just society is not ruled by the mob. It is ruled by thoughtful men and women who discuss things openly and honestly and with even some compassion for other human beings and how they think, and realize that, you know what, I have to realize, even myself, that other people are just as passionate as me on a subject. So I have to follow my own medicine and listen to what they're saying and try not to scowl or make a face when they say things that are inaccurate or wrong. And that's one of my hopes, is for, even if it's a small society, to live in a place where human beings are given due process, and if they're, and they strive for nobility and goodness and caring, if that can happen, I think that would make for a better and more noble society, even within the little community that you live in. And if that community doesn't offer that or doesn't believe in that, go live in a different community. Go strive to live somewhere else where you can find, human beings and people that are willing to listen to you as a human being, as one human being to another. Because, in my opinion, that is the way to bring along the best possibility of peace. If civil and noble people can discuss things, and human beings can come together and speak and not be taken in by the mob and not be taken in by hyperbolic talk. I know I've said hyperbolic things in the past. I don't want to do that. That's not the way in which I want to go about things. But if people continue to do that, my only thing to do is to leave. I cannot stick around or stay around with people that are in a hive mind, who think that they're so right that human beings are not allowed any kind of due process before they're punished, before punitive action takes place. And that's what it feels like today in this modern society, that human beings are not being heard out, and the presumptive of innocence and the punishment. How long should someone be punished? And is there a place for forgiveness and contrition for wrong behavior, particularly if it's just words? We all make mistakes. We all do and say things that we never should have said. And again, I come back to this as a person who lost his parents. Just about every moment of upsetness and anger that I had at my parents as a grown adult, I would have handled differently. And I got into physical confrontations as a young man. And if I had it to do over again, I would, those kind of things, I would never have involved myself in. I don't have to prove anything. I believe in learning self-defense, but I believe in striving to avoid conflict at just about all cost. I am not a pacifist. I don't believe that human beings, like you should allow someone to hit you and stick around and turn the other cheek. I don't believe in that. I think in a conflict situation, you either flee or you fight. Me, a lot of times, I'll choose to flee. I'll choose to walk across the street. I'll choose to strive to defuse the situation to the best of my ability. Whether I'm at work, whether I'm in front of people talking, that is the thing that I want to strive to do, is diffuse things. There's a lot of angry people out there right now, a lot of people who feel unheard. And hopefully they can be heard as human beings. And I want to deal with, their anger. To me, I think people are angry who don't feel heard and don't feel their questions are being asked. And they're being punished for their misconduct, but others are not punished for their misconduct. And we've created, to a degree, an unfair society, an unfair world. And again, I'm not saying that it's always been fair, and unfairness has always been part of the human condition. But if you strive for a just society, it's something to talk about and discuss. And relationships should be win-win. It can't be I win, you lose, or you win, I lose. It's got to be a give and take, a win-win situation. And if that's not going to be the relationship, why would I want to be in it? And why would you want to be in a relationship where you lose? Do you want to be treated as a human being, the right to be heard, the right to air your grievances as a human being? Don't you want that? I'm not saying that everyone who has grievances has the right to be heard, but some grievances, human beings have a right to be heard. And there are some things that are happening within the society where human beings have a right to be heard as human beings. And that's basically it. I'm trying to get a grasp on here how I can better myself, and anyone else that's listening. Probably no one's listening right now, and they just hear me bloviating. But I'm just, again, I kept away for a while. I wanted to gain myself. I want to strive to get myself both physically healthy and, to a degree, in a better mental place. Less anger, strive to work harder. That's one of my weaknesses. As I grow older, I still waste a hell of a lot of time. And I know I can succeed better and do better. And each time gets perhaps a little bit better. Each time I think I do one of these podcasts, I kind of succeed a little bit better. But I think maybe if I plan more and, looking at editing equipment and other things, just striving to do good, and it's an interesting lesson. I've gone on a few shows. I've gone on CT, Chaotic Truth, and I find that really interesting. And some of the individuals there, one of them reminds me of one of the coaches I used to have as a child. And, it brings back certain memories that I have of certain adults, the characteristics of certain adults that I had around me as a child and a young adolescent in my formative years. And they, they formed me. And I was formed by all types of races, ethnicities, religions, all types of human beings formed me. They formed my character and my thoughts. There are famous people that formed my character and my thought. And I've said this before, Sidney Poitier really formed me to a degree. His stoicism and the way in which he handled adversity was something that resonated with me. And if you read his story, here's a man, again, came impoverished from the West Indies. When he first tried out for acting, he was basically refused, but he worked on himself and he built a character of himself. He reinvented himself. And I know that I remember I said that on Chaotic Truth, and there was someone who said, well, he said America was a racist country and he didn't agree with it. He's a man of his time. He was beaten up in Mississippi. So I might have felt perhaps the same way he did about America. And if I would have been in his shoes, I'm just telling you that I gained certain things from him. And I gained more from him than I did from John Wayne, who I am a John Wayne fan. But I gained more personally from Sidney because he did deal in adversity. And I also dealt with adversity from all types of different groups. And I learned to, be that strive to be that stoic self. I don't think anyone can imitate Sidney Poitier, imitate, Paul Newman, or any of those other individuals whom I looked up to when they played certain characters that I wanted to emulate. Hombre, and in the Hombre for Paul Newman, the movie Hombre, that kind of bristled character of just doing what is survival and truth and honesty. And in the heat of the night, with Sidney Poitier, the way he dealt with adversity struck a chord with me. Anytime that I dealt with adversity, cruel people, I kind of looked at that film as a way not to handle things with anger, but just to come with facts and other things. And I've come to just recently certain beliefs and certain things that I believe that are in the mindset of a lot of people. But I think if they heard my opinion on certain subjects, they would, I think there are a lot of people that would see my way on that. There are a lot of historical people that we tend to admire, and I don't necessarily admire them anymore. And there's nobody that I look up to or that I really miss and love except for my parents. I admired, or I guess to a degree, I take that back, man. I'm walking all over the place. Sorry, folks. There are certain behaviors that I admired, but I don't look at them. I don't know if you want to say like a fan, or that they're not flawed human beings. and that they can do no wrong. I look at them as men, not angels, just as my parents. I thought my father for a long time was one of the worst human beings ever. And then when he passed away, I kind of realized that he was a human being with a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. And of course, he did those things to me. And if I had it to do over again, I would have responded in a much more mature way. And I didn't. And I always think of that. Those times, and saying, you know what? And I kind of want to think about that myself. I thought I was so right in my dislike for my father. I thought it was my strength, and anything that I could get out of him, I would. Like I said, I'm not proud of the manner in which I behaved. And I'm not proud of my self-righteous anger that I had. And I think a lot of anger is self-righteous anger. And if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be angry. I would not be angry the way that I was. I'd like to think, but then again, maybe I would. And there are still times where my ego gets the better of me and I get angry. But also, being an older man, realizing that the competition for young women is something that is no longer there as a human being. I guess I can kind of look that thing over, but I have to say that I wished I had known what I knew years ago. I wish that certain things resonated with me then. Now, I certainly cannot go back in time. And there are people, I know a few people that are angry at their parents, and I cannot convince them to think otherwise. And I kind of thought the same way. I was not angry at my mother for the most part. I do think, again, there were disadvantages at having my father. I'm not going to get into that anytime soon, but it's something that did bother me as a child, and his response to it was not the way in which I wanted it. But human beings don't often do that. They don't fess up to their wrongs. And again, we saw three people. What was it? Let's see here. Liz Cheney, Brian Stelter, and I talked about Sam Harris. Sam Harris to me is in a different category. It surprises me, his behavior, and I wish he was more intelligent. I also wish Liz Cheney had been more intelligent, because, in my opinion, had she not gone the route that she did, and she explained things in a better manner, and at least observed what had happened to Trump supporters, how often they were assaulted physically, I think that maybe had she had some compassion for them, for their plight, I think to a degree there may have been some kind of like she wouldn't have lost. Had she not gone with this January 6th thing, and maybe she felt absolutely that she was correct and right. And I've said this before. Alan Dershowitz basically he has said that that he thinks that the January 6th case and what Trump did does not rise to the level, and Cheney for president. Okay, yeah, that's not going to happen. She's far right, and the conservatives dislike her. And there were a lot of people, by the way, that supported Trump just because they did not like the left. They were disgusted by the left. And I don't know why a lot of these so-called anti-Trumpers are some of these individuals that don't like Trump cannot see, why some people voted conservative. I disagree. I really disagree. I think she's out of touch with the conservative base, and I don't even think that she's intellectual enough. I don't think that Liz Cheney is intellectual enough to know, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think that she is intellectual enough to know where she went wrong. And again, if she is completely right in what she did, she would go on a show with Alan Dershowitz and explain her side. She is an attorney. And she can explain her side on why she believed herself to be right. And Sam Harris, who called Liz Cheney a brave Republican, he could go on the Alan Dershowitz show and explain why he believed that these January 6 hearings were good and convince people why. But you should go against good opposition. You should go against the best opposition out there. And those things should happen. There should be debates on this issue. And it seems like we're not debating anymore. We're not discussing. And not only that, we're not discussing. It's all about obedience. And I don't want to just get to a place of obedience. We were told again to wear a mask, and maybe that's the right thing to do. Maybe what the CDC was saying was correct. But do we have the right to question how effective it is and the pros and the cons of this sort of thing? And do two people who have differing views on these subjects, can they meet in the middle? I mean, I wonder how many moderates there are out there. And it feels like right now there is a hive mind of people out there, particularly in the city where I live, where they are afraid to speak publicly things that used to be common sense, things that used to be accepted. And that's not necessarily being done today. And there's a lot of real vitriol on both sides of the aisle. And we're not talking to one another. We're not talking to one another. We're not talking with one another. We're talking at each other. We're trying to make points and bonus points. And I guess there are people out there in the elites who believe that certain questions should not be answered, or that they were already answered to their specific, they were already answered or whatever, and we've gone over this. And they don't see, I guess to a degree, they don't see the mannerisms and the behavior in which they handled it. And I don't know, I've never seen anything like this, any type of behavior like this. It's rather new for me. And I don't know to a degree how many people are open to honest discussions out there. Yeah, I'm told to cover my face by Master of Rope. But I'm just curious how you get people to change, and how many people are willing to look at a human being's different point of view. Because, again, even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, human beings should, to a degree, be able to swallow their emotion and look at facts and evidence to the best of their ability. And that's one of the things that I'd like to start doing. And just, I think a lot of people acknowledge certain biases in the news and certain behaviors within news departments. I don't know. I've never really asked anyone, do news departments today, do they act in ways that they acted 25, 30 years ago? And I don't see that. Again, I kind of became interested in the news over 40 years ago, 42 years ago. During the Iranian hostage crisis, I recall the news and the way and the manner in which it was presented. And now I see things in a different manner, and I'm seeing behavior in a different manner. I know I'm kind of a broken record on this. And I guess to a degree, it bothers me. Maybe it's for the click. And Master of Rope says, you're not changing minds. Probably not. I mean, for the most part, I don't think that is necessarily an easy thing to do. And for me, to change, when I changed my mind, it was really more of a life, I had life circumstances more than people's words changed my mind. And that's where things started to happen, and I made changes. So on average, I think that life-changing events changes people's minds more than just words. And they have to be ready to hear certain things. And a lot of people who are set in their ways are not necessarily ready to hear other people's words. There are plenty of things that I've heard before. I've heard all forms of rhetoric before on either side. I've heard it. I've listened to it, whether it's "Let's Go Brandon" or, our democracy is at stake or any of this other stuff. I've heard all of that. I've heard people say, CNN lies or communist news, whatever to describe CNN, or MSNB hee-haw. I've heard all of that. And I've heard, they call, false news or Fox, I don't know how they spell Fox News, and you go online and you hear these things. It doesn't necessarily work. It helps. It, to a degree, helps the certain hive mind, But again, I wonder how much human beings can compromise, because I'm not seeing that today. I'm kind of eager for human beings to see things to a degree and at least listen to somebody's point of view. Anyway, this was a longer rant than I expected, but I hope you gained something from it. If you don't, I was just probably rambling. So anyway, this has been Brian with Transparency and Merit. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and perhaps visit our website. We're still working on it. Thank you for listening.